Hey guys, and welcome to another Retrospective. Today I thought we'd take a look at a very special game, my second, or arguably favourite game of all time. Simply put, this game is a fantastic experience end to end, and really showcases uniqueness, and we all know I'm a fan of games that break the mould. Whilst I was wading through the violent, watery torrents of brown shooters and mediocre hack and slash titles, a bright gem guided me towards uncharted waters, the JRPG Sea. I lowered the flag and set sail for this great treasure, before eventually reaching the land of the cult classics. Left and right, I saw games that were cherished by few, and the gleaming light that I saw came into reaching distance. It turned to me, its cover colourful and its aura inviting, before beckoning me to the TV. It sold poorly in America, we never saw it in Europe, and the sequel remains a lost cause. The game is EarthBound, or Mother 2, released under the latter name in 1994. Mother was a game released in 1989 and pretty much sucks in all ways. So Mother 2, being developed on the Super Nintendo, had much more technologically to make use of, but also an audience blind to the original, due to Mother's cancelled release in the West. So this left developers with a chance to bring a new IP to the West, and build on Mother for the East. Did they manage it? Yes. If Mother is a 1, Mother 2 is a million. It took the proposed ideas and said, I'm going to be better than you in every way. The similarities between Mother and Mother 2 are noticeable in some places, but every aspect of Mother has been rendered so unnecessary that there's no point playing it because of what Mother 2 did with the shared ideas. Upon first release in the US, EarthBound failed miserably, selling way under expected numbers. This, I believe, is because of a few reasons. Graphically, it's not very impressive, which I'll return to later. It cost a little more than other games of the time, so obviously parents wouldn't buy it for their kids. And finally, it's really, really weird. It's like a psychedelic rock song, but put into video game form. Abstract concepts thrown in every direction, creating a whirlpool of off-putting glancing images, to the layman. But, for those that did play it, the game formed a strong and dedicated fanbase, and it is widely regarded as a forgotten masterpiece. It inspired games such as Undertale because of its charm and lightheartedness. The sequel, Mother 3, while a game to this day has still not reached foreign shores, has had a complete free translation into English, which I'll link below. That's how much fans love this series. There's even a new fan project, which until recently was called Mother 4. I'd like to make a point and say that I'm not a huge fan of JRPGs. There are a few, such as Chrono Trigger, that I can enjoy, but for the most part, they're really not for me. But EarthBound is something different. Not only did I enjoy it, I loved it. But I like unique. As I've stated before, and I'll state again. Games that aren't following a trend usually grab my eye, and sometimes leave me with an unforgettable experience. EarthBound is one such title. I was apprehensive to play it at first, but a friend of mine bought it on the eShop on the Wii U, and assured me that it was amazing. Given his general track record with games, I quickly and confidently swiped myself a copy, booted it up, and began playing. From the get-go, I knew I'd like it. The game starts up and has a generally simple plot. Aliens, or rather an alien mastermind, known simply as Gygus, is going to corrupt the world and its citizens in the future. So the chosen boy and his friends must defeat the evil in the present, before he can achieve his goal. The simple setup is, however, only really used as a MacGuffin, to establish a narrative that in turn progresses in the most unpredictable of ways. Nintendo has always been one of those companies that pushes creative ideas, for better or worse, and EarthBound is no exception. While most JRPGs follow a generally sensible, coherent plot, as the genre has generally been more focused on story-driven gameplay over other genres of games, they're fairly confined to normal ideas when compared to this title. EarthBound follows the same narrative-centric style, but warps expectations by using settings, themes, and characters that don't fail to make you say, "What?" And this is where the game really shines. No RPG, or even games period that I can think of, throw ideas into the pot such as fighting giant sentient piles of puke. It's ideas like this that make EarthBound a breath of fresh air, even today. The game may be 24, but the ideas it presents are amongst the greatest I've experienced, along with basically anything by Grasshopper, Mount Your Friends, and the Choaniki series, to name a few. But moreover, EarthBound covers a wide array of topics, some trivial and expected within the context, and some rather dark and off-putting, and still manages to weave them seamlessly into a world that's believable. EarthBound is known to have had a troubled development cycle, with numerous scrapped ideas and restarts altogether. This explains that while theming and storytelling within EarthBound are immaculate, the mechanics are a bit of a mess. The menus are clunky and verbose, and I usually don't give the "they're fine when you get used to them" excuse. And the combat system isn't very well developed, which I can respect as a problem for some players. For example, the one team member combat, that is to say when Ness is on his own, is really basic and generally not the epitome of JRPG combat. It results in mindlessly pressing the bash button and occasionally healing, because, especially at the start of the game, Ness doesn't have any powers beyond this. However, in the latter sections of the game, like Ness's Nightmare, the combat is slightly more bearable because he has abilities, but the reuse of the same enemy becomes tiring, there's no variety. But when all 4 characters are present, the combat becomes a lot more fun, as they all have different abilities and the management of 4 characters is more reminiscent of other games of the genre. One part of the combat that is personally worthy of praise is that in typical RPGs, enemies will have a health bar. But EarthBound forgoes this, and it works great. It adds a layer of suspense to the combat. When tackling a difficult boss, not knowing how close you are to defeating them, while all the time knowing how much you're being knocked down, really makes them feel overpowering, and as a boss should, like an obstacle. It also brings far more satisfaction to defeating them, because it's unexpected and gives you a rush of excitement as they fade away. As far as micromanagement goes, EarthBound makes a good effort to put you in a losing situation, via hard-hitting enemies that will decimate the character's life bars if they're not kept at around 80%. Some enemies can even attack all characters in one blow, possibly ending it all in one hit. Now, I'm not a fan of one-shot enemies, but this is where one of EarthBound's most unique combat mechanics comes into play. While the enemies hit hard, the life bar isn't automatically taken down by a specified value. It rolls down. This gives players a few seconds to end a round of combat, manage which items they need to, and execute the prior commands, saving characters from certain death. It's a good mechanic, and I wouldn't change it. While we're on the topic of combat, would you look at those crazy backgrounds? They're not cityscapes decimated by giant monsters or underwater palaces. They're just trippy, moving shapes and colours, with no context as to where the characters are. It's simple, but an effective way of establishing a different view of the battle backdrops. I love this, and I wish more games would go for simpler style backgrounds and colours. Another criticism of EarthBound is that the perspective is all over the place. It's got this weird semi-top-down look, and there's an isometric look to it, but only on diagonal lines, and it's just weird. It doesn't look right for a lot of the time, and I can see why some people may have judged the game prematurely based on this factor. It's not anything I take issue with, but I understand it's ugly to some people. I'm a bit so-so about it, honestly. I don't hate it, but I don't really love it either. It's something that I view as one of the quirks of the game, personally. EarthBound is trying to be its own thing, rather than following a trend, and the weird and warped perspective of the game really distinguishes it amongst top-down or 30-degree angles seen in JRPGs around the same time. Another point on the art style is the use of simple, bright colours. I love this. I love simple and stylized. The Wind Waker is another excellent, albeit different example. Bright, vivid colours that aren't super detailed, that really stand out. It makes the warmer coloured environments look very inviting because they're brightly lit. Finally, the biggest praise I have to give to this game is the soundtrack. The heavy use of samples from bands as wide-ranging as the Beatles, TV shows such as Monty Python's Flying Circus, and even comedy soundtracks from the 1920s really add special touches of uniqueness this game demands. No other video game, to my knowledge, has a soundtrack as broad and interesting, and generally good to listen to as this one. It's got cheery Nintendo-style tracks that you'd expect, but towards the end of the game, the soundtrack takes a really dramatic turn for the worst, and is generally very unnerving. One of my favourites has to be the Sanctuary Guardians theme. As main bosses, you'd expect climactic music, but it's super chilled out and out of place. But because of this, it brings an unusual and memorable experience to the bosses. While EarthBound may not be for everyone, with its general rejection of game tropes from around the era, or just releasing at the wrong time, it's certainly a game that I cherish. I wish I'd have played it sooner, but as it never officially came to Europe until 2013. Yes, I know I could have downloaded a ROM if I really wanted to, but it slipped under my radar. It has been given the honour of a perfect 10 out of 10 and a very wholehearted Essential rating. A 10 out of 10 is only awarded to 2 games I've ever played, so it's not something I give lightly. I really hope that you get a chance to play this one, and its sequel, and if you really want, Mother as well, although it's a little dated, so watch out. Anyway, thanks for tuning in to Retrospective episode 7. I'll catch you around. This review stinks. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you liked what you just saw, remember to subscribe because there's always more. There's a link to episode 6 in the description. This is on Doshin the Giant, a weird and wonderful game. Well, I hope to see you next time.